Heaven and hell aren't just destinations after death for believers and non-believers. They are lived realities, here and now. Our show today, Connection is Heaven, Disconnection is Hell. Welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. I am your host, Justin Gates, and joining me today is my faithful companion, Michael Perry.
Hey, fam.
What's up, dude?
Man, another day in paradise.
I am loving that shirt today. I want you guys to look at that shirt. That is
styling.
That is styling. That is suave. Do we still use the word suave these days? I don't know.
It clicks for me.
Okay, well then we'll go with it. So, heaven is connection, and that's connection to source, to God, to others, to all of creation, to our own souls. What does that mean for hell? Disconnection, right? Exile, loneliness, alienation from all the things that give life meaning. It sure feels that way once we think about it. And this statement that I made, connection is heaven, disconnection is hell. I want you to think about that for a second. Don't think of hell as fire and brimstone and all that stuff. Think about hell in the context of being a cold silence, the cold silence of isolation, that emptiness of being where we feel and experience, right? Feelings aren't necessarily false. If you feel something, I feel something, it's certainly real to me and certainly real to you. So it's that feeling unseen, unheard, unloved. Doesn't mean that's actually happening to somebody, right? But if they feel it, then it's real to them. I'll also say that heaven is not clouds and harps and all these beautiful, wonderful things that we're kind of working our way towards, right? Or in hopes of getting. Heaven in this context is that warmth of belonging, where our heart is filled with joy and the feeling of being known and being heard and being seen. That harmony that I experience, and I know you experience after a few years of walking this path with me, that harmony of walking in step with the light, with that light of creation, with that connection to everyone and everything. You know, it's that every moment, every choice moves us closer to one another. What do you think about this topic that I have forced you into today?
I love this topic more than you even realize. And I love how you phrased it here because I've never looked at it through the lens of isolation versus connection. But if I look at it from all the paradigms I have evaluated it, which is, you know, I talk on this podcast all the time about in life, you either get bitter or you get better. And to me, that's always inching one way or the other towards heaven or towards hell. Because the more we hold on to resentments, the more we hold on to pain, the more we hold on to bitterness, the more we cast ourselves into hell. And on the contrary, the more we learn to let things go, to learn lessons, to not blame, but be accountable for the part we play in our own suffering, the more we transcend to heaven. But you look at this and you're right. At the root of all of those things is connection. Because as we get bitter, we end up isolating more. We push people out of our lives. We begin to not trust others. We begin to live inside our minds because we'd rather be best friends with ourselves than actually have one in person. And on the contrary, I look at my life and how I've always felt so blessed by God. And I spent most of my life in religion. I've always had a profound connection, not just to myself and to God himself, but to all those around me. To not judge others, but to be a welcoming home for people to be themselves. And it's granted me so much connection through my life. I have so many friends. I have so many people who I do trust and that I do love. And that is the heaven. That is the life essence of the good in my life. Yeah, I have nice things and I'm in a great place in life and I'm happy with what I'm doing. All those things contribute, but all of it's rooted. The glue that holds it together is connection. So connection. I love how that's what you associated it with because, yeah.
And of course, we teach that we should build bridges and not walls from different schools of thought or different perspectives, right? We like to bridge science and philosophy and spirituality and theology and even metaphysics, right? And, you know, science tells us everything in the universe is connected. Every star, every atom, every single molecule, every heartbeat. We can prove that the rhythms of our heartbeats connect to each other scientifically. And spirituality affirms the same. Psychology affirms it, and philosophy affirms it. So nothing actually truly exists in isolation in creation. That connection, disconnection happens within us, within our personal connection to creation, right? That's where it happens. Early on, I taught you that energy that glues the universe together, that keeps it in perfect harmony, does this to everything. It does it to everything outside of us. We have to, because we have free will. And you and I had this discussion a few days ago offline. We can get into that a little bit if you want. But what I had taught you early on was that there are kind of three levels to this energy, right? There's the overarching cosmic aspect of it, right? But then there's the living aspect too. And that's where we connect at the personal level. We connect to life force. So that's where this disconnection and connection really happens, because that's where our perspective is, that's where our focus is, that's where our feelings are, that's where we are. This is where we are in this moment. So everything is connected, whether we like it or not. And, when we forget this truth, we start to live in that disconnection and we suffer. And that suffering is hell. It really is hell. But when we start to remember, when we start to water those seeds of a different idea, of the truth, and we remember that, and we live in connection to not just source, but to all of creation, to one another, and to ourselves, right? Holistically, our being, where our mind and our body and our heart and our spirit are connected, we find peace, and that peace is heaven. And this is what we're going to explore today. So what do you think most people think of when they hear heaven and hell?
Heaven is where you go when you die, or you go to hell, depending on how bad of a person you were, or depending on what your belief system is.
Right.
Whether you took Jesus into your heart, or...
And that's what most people, I think, would...
Karmic cycles, when you look at Hinduism, I believe, I could have misquoted that.
Well, I mean, you're in the ballpark, even if you didn't, because that's really what it is at the end of the day. It's this place, this distant, and ironically, these are these distant places, right, that we kind of have in our mind. And it's not even distant places where we are right now. It's after we're gone, after we die. They're destinations instead of states of being, right? But I would argue, and which I will be arguing all throughout the show, and pitching to you and to all of you, is that long before we die, we get a taste of those things here, depending on where we're at. Not necessarily what we believe, what particular dogma we accept, or what particular agreements we make with others and their dogmas, but we taste them here. Heaven and hell are just not where we go. They could be. I'm not going to argue that that's not possible, or that's impossible, because I don't know. But what I would encourage people today to take away from this is that we can affect this here in moment to moment to moment where we're at. That these are states of connection and disconnection that are happening now, moment to moment, shaping every single relationship, even shaping every breath we take. So what I'll put forward to you today is that heaven starts with that knowing of belonging to source, to other people, that the great web of life, great web of creation. It's when your spirit feels seen, heard, and anchored, when you know that you are part of something larger, meaningful, and alive. What would you add to that?
Heaven is being in the flow, within the flow of all things. It is when you're connected to life and abundance and prosperity, and that does not mean infinite wealth or living in that 10-bedroom house you've always wanted. It means that you are living a life that it brings you joy, that you are aligned with. And when you're living that life, everyone listening to this, I guarantee at one point in their life has at least been in this state at least once. And many of us end up moving away from it and craving it, constantly reminiscing about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, life is hard. Life is suffering, as the Buddhists always said. And the reason they say that is because the more we allow suffering to control and dictate our lives, the more we drift away from it. The Buddhists looked at death as when we die, we either are reborn in going into a higher life or a lower life. And I think this ties right into the heaven and hell concept, where the lives we lead, we know what good we do in our lives and we know what bad we do. And the vibration of our souls, I guess you could say, ends up moving upwards or downwards, heaven or hell. And heaven itself, the more we raise our vibration, the more we enter into this realm of infinite possibilities. Even after we die, we keep moving forward and upwards, unless we choose to take the latter path.
Yeah. Interesting choice of words. Choice, right? Now,
I
will add to what you said. It's absolutely okay if you have a 7-figure bank account and 2 10-room mansions, if you're able to be humble, if you are able to kind of, I won't say follow our ethos dogmatically, but I think our ethos contain within them the DNA of figures like Christ, of paths of light and righteousness, right?
Yeah.
If you love without condition, if you always tell and honor the truth, if you have integrity, if you honor and seek greater connection with all things, and if you have a respect for all life, I think it's fine if you have a 10-room spot and a big bank account, as long as, because if you're living, if at your core you're living with those ethos, then you are in a good place. You're not in a good place because you have those things, the house and the bank account and whatever. You're in a good place because you have the ethos at your core, and everything you do outwardly, right? Those are on every word, every action, every thought. So,
well, I mean, you look at people who have those things, most of them suffer from depression. And it's because that people think, if I just get here, if I just get this is going to make me happy. This is what's going to make me feel fulfilled. And so many people get there and they're in hell because they realize, there's no connection in that. That's just bragging rights and a nice place to sleep. Like,
well, and who are you bragging to, right? Because no one really feels that. I don't remember the topic of the show we did, but we did this months ago. Probably one of our earlier shows within the first dozen or so, where we talked about, who are you competing with?
Yeah.
Right? All you're doing is exiling yourself and creating isolation. That may contain some shame, a lot of loneliness for sure, suffering. And really, ironically, many people who go and gather and hoard these things without having a good solid core, as I talked about, they start to feel like they don't belong anywhere because they're sitting on a mountaintop all by themselves, right? But when we sever this connection, when we go out of our way to not nurture the connection with people, with creation, with God or source, life turns really cold, and things, and we talked about this before, how things kind of shrink in on us and we get kind of, right? And things become very heavy. And eventually, Michael, you may even go so far as to becoming a stranger, not to just everyone else, but to yourself too.
Yeah, it's happened before. When I was in that 7-year relationship and I started cutting people out of my life, I started cutting my own interests out, and it was just like I was a shell of who I once was. And it's taken a lot of work to bring me back to where I am even today, and there's still work to be done.
Our axiom, the first axiom we're going to talk about today in relation to this topic is nourish the mind, body, and spirit with the sustenance of virtue and righteousness. Not self-righteousness, righteousness, true righteousness. Connection is one of the greatest forms of nourishment. It sustains us, and it can sustain you completely if you let it, if you don't resist. Without it, we starve on the inside, spiritually and psychologically, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like I was thinking about, you said something really profound earlier that can be very subtle and missed. And that's how people who have these nice houses and all that, how they don't nurture the connections. And I see 90% of people I know are either struggling with isolation or preferring isolation. And it's because no one is nurturing their connections. And a lot of them it is, well, they're not nurturing the connection, I'm not going to nurture the connection. And that mentality is so poisonous because life is so busy and distracting that we can't hold these expectations. That's not unconditional love. Love has no expectations. One of the reasons I have so many connections is I have no expectations on any of them. I'm the one who reaches out once a month. Hey, how you holding up? How's the situation going in your life? And I don't get those messages from them very often at all. And I'm totally okay with that because it's unconditional love. It is wanting to nurture those connections because I value them as people, not because they scratch my ego or validate me. It's not transactional. That's right, Kitty.
There's axiom for that too. But when it is, it's usually not a good bond if everything's transactional. And speaking of that, some of the agreements that we'll be exploring today along the way. First one is family. You were created to belong. Family isn't just something that's biological, right? It's that sacred truth that no soul is meant to always walk alone or to be alone. Even when I'm in solitude, I'm never alone, right? To embrace the agreement of family here is to remember that connection is the natural state of being. It's a natural state of our creation. Everything, just look around you. Send out your energy. Take some deep breaths and just push your energy out. And tell me you don't touch everything around you, even beyond the borders of our atmosphere, right? When I first taught you that exercise, and I know you've talked about this before on the show, did you have this overwhelming just sense of, oh my God, I feel everything. And no matter how far out I go, I'm never alone.
Yeah. I'll be honest. People watching is one of my favorite hobbies. And you have helped me take people watching to a whole nother level. Because when I can go to the mall, I can go to a concert, and I just allow myself to get into that zone to feel everyone around me. It is so amazing to feel the joy, the expectation, just all the different culmination of emotions and the interconnectedness between families who are around each other. And it's one of my favorite things to do is just to feel the energy of those around me because it's so bountiful, especially when they're in groups, especially when they're living their best life.
Yeah. And again, this isn't biological. It's that sacred covenant that we make with others, our chosen family as well as our blood family. So, and again, to embrace this is to remember that the connection is our natural state and that isolation is a wound, is the illusion. And when we drift from relationship, we drift from the very design of life, the very design of all of creation. Everything is meant to be symbiotic with the other. The next one is respect. Respect pops up a lot, but it's because it's probably one of the most important ones. And I know I've always told you time and time again, none of them are more important than the others, but with a lot of the things that we talk about, respect is important here because true connection requires respecting someone else, honoring that sacred other that we're connected to, seeing another human being as sacred as we are and worthy of our dignity. And when we fail to respect that, we break that bridge. We kind of, the old saying, burning a bridge, right? So disrespect is the first, I don't know if it's the first seed of disconnection, but it certainly starts to sow disconnection.
When I think respect, it's so at the core of connection because when you don't respect your fellow man, the people in your life, even the people who have hurt you, with respect, we can see their humanity and understand that they were just hurt, broken, or in their own realm of dealing with their own crap. With respect, we can give back so much of our held on energy, this negative stuff that makes us bitter, because it allows us to, again, see the humanity of other people. There's so many people out there nowadays who can't stand people. And it's like there's no respect for humanity. It's there's just stupid people out there.
But when they disrespect them, what are they doing? They're disrespecting themselves. And as we say over and over again, subconsciously our minds, it has no sense of humor. It has no sense of anything other than feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me. And we talked about this in our Reaping What You Sow episode a couple of episodes back, where you're always going to reap something. Probably not always what you want or what you hope for, but yeah, when you disrespect, If I went on my way to disrespect you, then I'm just disrespecting myself. And that stuff starts to add up, planting seeds in me too.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up too. I read a book a couple months ago that was fascinating called Karma. It was written by Sadhguru, who's one of my favorite people to listen to. And he talks about karma isn't about, I kicked the dog, now I'm going to get kicked later. It is every time you do something against your authenticity, anytime you act out of alignment, you have thoughts that then start manifesting in your head. That inner critic starts getting fed from these things we choose to do in life. And our karma is strictly that. Our karma is that voice in the back of our minds. It's the seeds that end up getting sowed inside of us when we act out of alignment and disrespect one another.
It sounds like they're trying to build bridges too, because you can find that truth in lots of different schools of thought, right? Faith is another big one for this, because we need to trust that we can always reconnect, because we all fall out of alignment, out of connection from time to time, especially if we don't know what to look for, right? And that connection, especially when we get kind of deep in the weeds, that connection feels like it'd be lost forever. But the agreement of faith says bridges can always be rebuilt. No one's beyond redemption. That extends to nothing is beyond redemption eventually. So faith says bridges can be rebuilt. We can reopen our hearts, and others can reopen their hearts. It holds hope when hurt tempts us to give up and whispers to us to let it go and give up and not try, or shouts at us. Faith is important here.
Well, and it's through faith that it allows us to give that. Often when we struggle with connection, it's because we don't want to put ourselves out there. We don't want to put faith in other people because it's easier to carry the load ourselves. When you'd be amazed what it's like when you start realizing that helping others like you like to do is exactly what most other people like to do. But it takes faith and relying on one another. And yeah, some people are going to screw with that trust. Some people aren't going to, what am I looking for here? Aren't going to be the type of person you end up wanting to have in your life.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because then you learn that. Too. That's how you start finding golden friends.
Yes. That's how you start building your circle.
Yeah.
That circle of trust.
Takes seeing what pops up and then figuring out what stays, what sticks, what people hold to your value system.
Right. And they may be there for a time. They may be there for a lifetime. Doesn't matter. It's not up to us to worry about that stuff, right? Hope is another one. We have faith that we trust that we can always reconnect. Hope is believing that we can be reached again, that light can reach us again, that connection can reach us again. No matter how exiled you feel or alone you feel, hope reminds you that no darkness is permanent. There is always a way back. You may not like the way back sometimes, because you have to put that trust, because you might have to be vulnerable, because you might have to face things that you are not willing to face, or maybe not so much willing, but really hard pressed to, right? Because the pain is just unbearable. That crushing, shrinking of everything around you may become too bearable, but you can't give up hope, because there's always a way back.
Well, I think hope is the one thing that, when we go through these dark periods of our life where disconnection ends up running amok just because we've let ourselves go, whether we had something tragic happen or just life got to be too much, we burned out, whatever it is. Hope is the thing that keeps us grounded. It keeps us knowing that there is another side. There is something on the other side that's better than this. And hope has been my greatest asset in my darkest days, because that is what kept me going.
And of course, there is our ethos that everything springs from these. Love is the ultimate connector, wouldn't you say? Love is that energy that binds life together. As you said, unconditional love. To love is to really make a declaration that no one is disposable. No wound is beyond tending or healing. Without love, connection starves. Truth. Connection simply cannot grow. Relationships cannot grow without truth, because nothing grows from falsehoods and lies and deceit. We must always endeavor to be honest with ourselves, of course, first, and each other, about what we need, about what we desire, about what pains us, what's hurting us. Pretending is isolation. So if we just, put away our authenticity, we wear a mask, we just go on pretending and pretending and pretending, and eventually we will find ourselves isolated and disconnected. Truth is what builds the bridges.
Ability. It's being able to be fully yourself with those you trust.
And of course, integrity. We always have to try and be our whole selves, right? A connected being everywhere we go. And this means living in consistency with what we say, what we do, what we believe is both inner and outer. They're the same, no matter where we are, whether we're at a concert or by ourselves, right? We have to be aligned with inner and outer. And those masks block intimacy. They block vulnerability. They block all the building blocks of those bridges that we need to create.
And for more information on that, we just had a blog post on Sunday about authenticity in relationships.
NewAshla.com. It's the best website on the internet. Promise you. Check it out. Connect to it. Connection is obviously the topic today. It's one of our ethos. That's at the very heart of this heaven that we're talking about. And the energy flows. You were talking about it earlier when I asked you to describe what heaven was in the context of this episode today. And you were talking about the flow, how that energy flows between souls, whether we see it or not, whether we know it or not, whether we want it to or not. And connection is what heals us, what starts that healing process, what helps us heal, right? And it invites belonging and restores that vitality in our being. So again, heaven and hell aren't simply about what comes next after I do all the things in this life that I do, good or bad, right? They are a lived reality of connection or disconnection right now, and then right then, and then each moment. So to move toward heaven is to move toward relationship. Again, with others, with self, with source, creation. So, and of course, the opposite of that is to live in hell, to be cut off, to be alone, to be shrunk down and being crushed under the weight of that.
Live with those karmic thoughts as your only friend.
Yeah. So it'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that web that creation is bound by, that glue. I spoke to a pastor friend of mine the other day, and the way he described this, and I thought it was the greatest way to explain this ever. And I'm going to steal it probably here or there, borrow it maybe. But he said, think about a Rice Krispie treat, right? We all love rice. Who doesn't love Rice Krispie treats? But he described this web of connection. And whether you want to see it as an energy or a spirit, I think it's probably both, or it could be both. But he said, think of that as the marshmallows that hold the Rice Krispie treat together. And I thought that was the most delicious metaphor I've ever heard of. But it was a really good one, right?
It is, though.
So, that's, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about this a little bit before we moved on. So, we live in a universe that's woven together by these invisible threads, by the marshmallows, by the spirit or energy, right? And again, science shows us that every atom is in constant relationship. They exchange particles, they vibrate with energy. Our heart beats with electromagnetic fields, right? Heart Math. If you ever read that book, go get it, listen to it, whatever. Heart Math does a very good job of explaining that. It's a book that I recommended to you. And it was a book that made me really think differently about vibrational patterns and electromagnetic fields. Things that aren't necessarily outside the spirituality or theology or philosophy, but it does help make it kind of more real, right?
Right.
So, and these fields extend beyond our skin. They're around us, aura, energy bodies. Our mind isn't actually in our brain. It's probably somewhere out here that we connect to knowledge and to things that we couldn't possibly know, but yet we know them, right? So, and these things, these energies, these vibrations, they interact with kind of the field of potentiality and the people around us and the birds and the bees and the trees and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, we're quite literally connected at the most fundamental level. So, and spiritually, we don't necessarily call this Ashla. Ashla is the path, but we call this, the life force energy. We call it the force. It doesn't really matter. The name doesn't matter because that doesn't change what it is and what it actually does. You could think of it as that current of light, or the light of creation, if that feels better, that runs through all of creation, permeating and surrounding and holding us all together. But this isn't just some poetic idea. It is literally the living flow of energy or spirit that binds us to one another and to creation and to source, to God. To feel connected isn't like, this kind of fragile idea or like, I hope it's true. We see it in every school of thought. Some way, shape, or form, they all talk about it. It's those bridges again. So, and what does this tell us? Well, again, that the deepest really illusion is separation, because you can't separate from that, even after you die. And the deepest truth is connection.
Well, and it's like even those who are the most isolated, right? They leave ripples to anyone that is in their life. They feel that energy, that disconnection has ripples beyond you. You can think you keep it all to yourself and that because you isolate, there is no connection.
Right.
But you would be amazed whether it's your family members trying to reach out because they're concerned about you, or it's the people at work that can feel that just sadness that you carry with you. I mean, our energy is something that you ever walk into a room and you feel you can get a reading on the room? Same goes for people.
Every damn, yeah.
And those who are deep in their isolation, you can tell who they are. And it doesn't make them bad, mind you. This is not a good or bad thing. If anything, those are the ones you need to reach the hand out the most to help pull them out of it.
Yeah. I add nothing to that. There are those in the world that would have us believe that we are separate. You can be an individual and part of the whole at the same time. It literally happens every single day to every single one of us, But if you feel like, and again, feelings may not be an expression of truth, but they're always true to the person who is experiencing them. I won't deny that. I won't argue that. I won't deny that, because I have feelings that I know. Sometimes I have these feelings that I know for a fact aren't truth, but yet I'm experiencing them, and I got to figure out a way to get through them, right? So separation, you have this big shadow over you. It's not reality. Reality is relationship, connection. We're bound together literally at the most fundamental, tiny speck. You can't even see it with your eyes. You got to use a machine to see it. It's still there. So we are bound together at these levels, bound by light, by breath, by our beings in themselves. This next segment is right up your alley. I'll put this in here for you, my man.
I felt the love.
I know you did. The psychology of disconnection. Let's walk through that for a minute.
Man, so the first thing you got in these notes about how loneliness is more dangerous than smoking or obesity is 100% accurate. I literally just learned about this in positive psychology. They talk about how there are literal links to well-being and connection. Relationship connection, friendship connection, family connection. When you are isolated and alone, your immune system just declines at a horrible rate. You start having body aches and issues. It's almost like your body revolts against you because you're revolting against yourself, against your basic needs that you don't want to deal with because your insecurities or your fears are greater than your drive to bridge this gap of connection.
Yep. We talked about this in one of your shows not too long ago, when we talked about survival mode, fight, flight, and freeze. How does this disconnection affect those? Do they put us into those? Do they enhance those?
Well, when we're in connection, we constantly feel this abundance. We're never in a scarcity mentality when we are surrounded by those who we love. And when we are on our own, yes, we are 100% thrown into survival mode, because then all of a sudden we start going into anytime anyone rubs against us the wrong way, we'll go into fight, we'll go into freeze or flight. And when we're at home, we're constantly anxious. Please don't call me. Please don't call me. I don't want to deal with it.
Oh God. Just text me so I can leave you unread, please.
Or you're anxious that you want people to reach out, but you don't know how to do the reaching out yourself. And so you start getting in your head, they don't like me because of this, this, and this, and they're horrible because of this, this, and this. Then you have those moments and you get that phone call. It's like, how you doing, man? It all just goes away. It's like that first girlfriend who you're waiting by the phone to call you,
Or your 10th. I don't think, it's...
Yeah, true that.
We'll have to do a show about that one of these days. Get a couple of experts on to help us through that. Some relationship experts, right?
Yeah.
That'll be a fun show. So disconnection is not just an idea. It's something that the body literally feels as danger. And loneliness, again, like you said, has been shown to be as harmful, if not more harmful, than smoking or obesity. Very real physical ailments, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we people die from these things, smoking and obesity. And when we're cut off from those meaningful connections, our nervous system just doesn't feel safe. It moves into survival mode, that fight, flight, or freeze. Because again, I'll say it again and again, deep down, fundamentally, we were created and wired to belong, to feel connection, to have connection. So, and again, this is why disconnection feels like hell. Our anxiety starts to go through the roof. We start possibly getting into a depression, really deep one. We start to sleep less, our literal our immune system starts to kind of quit out on us sometimes. Our soul gets restless. You ever had a restless soul? Man, that is the worst because you can't even pinpoint it. It's just, right? You're just kind of
Constantly anxious.
out of whack, right? So this is why isolation is so destructive. And this isn't just a spiritual malady. It's a total malady for the whole being, especially the mind and the physical body and the heart and the soul. But, and I'll throw this out to you, disconnection, I would say, rarely happens overnight, right?
That's slow eroding.
Right. It comes from long periods of neglect or small choices to pull back, or not tending to those friendships or those relationships that you said earlier, where you just stop reaching out and hoping that no one reaches out to you. So, I know disconnection can happen in a moment when somebody passes away or somebody breaks up with us. We talked about grief before, but that's not the same kind of disconnection we're talking about. Because in the act of grief, you're still connected. That's why you feel so much when you're grieving, right? This kind of disconnection we're talking about doesn't happen overnight. It starts slow and it just gets worse and worse and worse to where really you may get to a point where you stop feeling anything, right? Or anything that resembles feelings.
When I'd say even in grief, I mean, the one thing is it's all things in extremes, because there's times we do need to take some R&R. We need to get away from other people, spend time with ourselves, the hermit phase. I think anytime we go through any major life event, we go into a period of isolation. And the key is to not let that consume you and to make sure that you have an exit strategy.
Yeah.
It's like I'm lucky I had such good friends that when I was dealing with my grief, and even though I had not burned the bridges, but I had done a lot of damage to my relationships, I was able to reach out and be like, hey, like this is going on. I know how things have been, but I want to show up. And they showed up for me in my grief and helped me along the way. And they didn't automatically want me to start hitting them up all the time. They knew I was going through the process, but they knew that I wanted them to check in on me. Hey, do we need to go? We should go golfing. Hey, we should go take a hike. Hey, what you getting into tonight? And most of the time I would be like, nah, I don't want to socialize right now. But it was thanks to having that connection that I had my exit strategy, where as I built myself up, I was able to get more and more into my life again, thanks to connection. So just be wary of the pitfalls, because there are times where we need to isolate, we need to look inwards and spend time with ourselves, but that is part of those choices.
I would say we should set time away to be in solitude, right? Solitude, especially the way we practice solitude on this path, is for a purpose, so that we can take our inventories, so we can, do the things we need to do to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a word I use all the time. My brain is just shut down on me. But it's those times where we have to kind of go over our day or our week or our month and, find what works, find what we need, and let go of the things that aren't serving us anymore. So there is a healthy way to, again, I wouldn't call it isolation, though. Isolation is kind of that dark place. Whereas solitude, you have a purpose, and a healthy purpose, to remove yourself and take yourself out of the fray for a minute. But you segued me into a couple of the axioms that I felt kind of are important here. The first one is decay comes from complacency. Because when we start nurturing these bonds, and it doesn't have to be out of this kind of dark thing that we're talking about today, disconnection, but it could be, you're too busy, or you're hurt, or you're too proud, or those connections, they weaken and they fray, right? You got to think of your relationships like gardens. They need tending. They need weeding. They need pruning and sowing and reaping, right? And the other one is confusion distorts reason. When in doubt, do not act. Seek guidance and proceed cautiously. When this disconnect, because we said it doesn't happen overnight, right? And when it starts to creep in, it starts to settle, and it starts to kind of chip away at that, we'll oftentimes tell ourselves things to justify it, stories even.
Yeah.
And when we get to a point where it's like, Michael doesn't care about me, I'm safer alone, right? And this is where clarity and discernment comes in, where we have to say, is that really true though? I think Michael does actually care about me, and I'm probably not safer alone.
Yeah. When we were talking earlier about how the inner critic lives in the back of our minds, and the more we isolate, the more it becomes our best friend. That's exactly what you're talking about here, where we get into these places where all of a sudden we're confused because our mind is constantly feeding us these false narratives.
Right.
And we're determined to believe them. I mean, again, RAS, our reticular activating system, is constantly looking to validate our beliefs.
Right.
When we start believing the voice inside our head, we're going to look for anything that is proof to what it is telling us.
Right. So I kind of came up with 4 pathways of connection, and I want to go over those together. So I'll start with the first one. To God, the source, the light of creation, prayer, which is something we do almost every show. It's something I do in private, in my personal life. I pray, I meditate. I set aside those moments of awe. I know you do too. When we connect outside of the show, we share those moments of awe. We share those moments of, oh man, I had a really great prayer / meditation today, and I seen this or experienced this or whatever. We don't allow ourselves to not be in awe of things that are, beyond us, right? But these things, this pathway to connection could be something simple as standing under the night sky. Where you grew up is I used to love working nights there, because there is no light, really, no light pollution.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime, ironically, well, I shouldn't say, I don't know if it's ironic or not, but of course, during the wintertime, when it's the coldest and the quietest in the forest, you look up in the sky and everything is perfectly clear, right? It's just standing under that and just looking at all of that and just be like, wow. Like every time you look at it, it's just like, oh my goodness. Oh, wow. Like I'm in awe every time, no matter how many times I see it. Just simple things like feeling your breath, becoming aware of your breath, simple meditation, right? These couple of things can draw you back to that current, and they really help quiet the noise of isolation. And I know it's ironic that I said that, right? Well, if you're in isolation, you're all alone. Would that be quiet? No, it's a whole different kind of noise. It's dissonance, right? It's loud. It's really loud.
One, like you said, it's a type of connection.
Yes.
It really is.
Right.
I know one of the darkest depressions I ever went through. I went hiking every day. That is what I did, and it cured my depression. I had depression through my entire childhood. And one day I said, screw it, I'm quitting the meds. And I started hiking every day. I'd go up to the waterfall, I'd go climb a mountain and just enjoy the view. It was soaking in the awe and the amazingness of all things. I would sit there and reflect on how all the trees are connected through their roots.
Yes.
How everything's growing around me. I mean, it's endless, the things I would be able to start seeing and just appreciating.
Yeah. That's awesome, because when you lose that lack of awe, then you stop realizing the truth that there is something greater than you, and there are things greater than us. Amazing things. You can pick a star in the sky and probably never be able to get on a rocket ship and actually land on that thing.
Right.
But you can see it. You can see it from here. It's amazing. It's almost unbelievable. When I when I look at these miracles in nature, in creation, it amazes me, blows my mind every time, right? And that's good for the soul. Scratch that. So the next one is connection to others.
I mean, you got empathy, the ability to. We've harped on it this whole episode, but the reason connection is so important is it's the people in our lives that help hold us accountable, help boost us up when we're down, and help act as mirrors. When that voice in our back of our heads is the thing that's defining our reality, we get distorted real quick. But when you have connection, when you have people in your life, you can talk to them about these thoughts, these paradigms you might be having. And you can either have it be validated or help them question it for you. Have them, and this is something that happens naturally. I'm not saying go, hey, I was thinking maybe the moon isn't a real thing, and then you have a discussion about it, but they can be like, that sounds a little crazy, man. You might want to think about that. But it's so important to have this social mirroring, because so often, our minds are very much have a negativity bias. They constantly want the negative. When we have connection, even though we have a negative towards ourselves, we see the positive in everyone. One of the greatest weaknesses in relationships in the modern day is this love of potential, because we end up loving people for who they could be and not who they are in this moment. Well, the people in our lives see our potential and want to help us reach that. They can help call us on our crap and help us find ways to make our dreams a reality.
Acts of service helps us connect. Being vulnerable. These things all help repair these broken bridges if they're broken. And, usually we all have something that we could repair, right? I do. No, I do. As you said, to choosing to see the humanity in others, sharing your story, showing up, be there for people, be there for your friends, create that circle of trust. Connection to self. You can't really, it's really difficult. I probably shouldn't say you can't, but it's really hard to connect outwardly until you connect inwardly, right? So these are things like journaling, truthful and honest reflection, which was the word I was looking for earlier.
Of course,
okay,
that was.
To go into solitude for reflection, right? It is what it is. And of course, that self-love, self-compassion. You need to learn to like hearing your own voice and meeting your wounds with compassion, with mercy, with grace. Because when you stop running from yourself, you stop projecting that onto others, that flight or fight onto others. I was just talking to Heather yesterday about connection. I told her we were going to do this show, and she didn't really quite understand the metaphor, the premise of it. And I said, well, connection is heaven, disconnection is hell. And she said, well, what about those people that you are purposely disconnecting from so that you don't have to relive some of those wounds, some of those traumas that they created, right? That's where connection to self is important.
I won't deny one of the best things I ever did for myself is when I had a grievance with someone and I had cut them out of my life. It was going back, and it wasn't making amends, but it's forgiveness, right? It's being able to release that burden we've been carrying for so long, and that's so damn difficult. Like that is I would rather pull teeth, but the liberation that comes from it. Like right now, I'm rebuilding a really important relationship in my life, and there's always been sort of this at odds with one another as far as personality types and sort of just different backgrounds, and just reaching out and extending that hand of like, hey, I love you anyway. Like, let's build. Mind you, this isn't someone who I have a grievance with. This is just one of those where there's a lot of work needing done to repair this relationship, and it's gritting through and doing the hard thing. The magic you are looking for is always in the work you are avoiding.
Yeah. And of course, that conversation turned into, kind of those first steps in, what we call shadow work here. And that ties into two of our ethos, love and connection, because you have to learn to forgive, which is something that I won't get too much into that today, because you and I will be recording a show here very soon about forgiveness and the power of healing that brings with it. Healing really can't start until we learn forgiveness, because, and I'll just say this as a little teaser. It's not necessarily forgiving people, forgiving the hurt that they caused, and I'll leave it there. So the fourth one in this pathway to connection is of course connection to creation, spending time in nature, cultivating that reverence, and again, that awe for the earth, for the cosmos, for all the birds in the sky, all the fish in the sea, all the animals and living things, both plant and animal on the earth, right? And just, again, remembering, not learning, because we already know this innately in here, remembering that we are part of something much older and much greater than ourselves. The trees, the oceans, the stars, they will tell you, they will tell you the story of connection if you let them.
Well, it's that awe, right? The more we can soak in the magic that is all around us. Like, that's the thing that's always perplexed me with people who are just don't believe in anything. Because it's like, look at everything around you. Look how perfect it is. The golden ratio, how shells form and how plants grow around each other where they don't bump in. Trees grow in a way that their branches don't bump into each other. The patterns that exist in life. There's no way this is accidental. There's no way this is just a thing. I mean, even society through history runs on patterns. It is so fascinating to me how much everything is an ebb and flow, which is creation. Yes. It is the beginning, the now, the end. It is all things in existence that has, is, and will be. It is.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Axiom of light. Live in accordance with the nature of things. In dwelling, live close to the land. In meditation, go deep into the heart. In your dealings with others, always stand by your word. Because there is a great and wondrous life to be had when living in harmony with the natural world, both inside and outside. And that's physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, right? This means embracing a life of balance, authenticity, integrity, connect with the land and with the air and with the sea, with all the elements, right? Because you have no idea how much sustenance you can get and how much inspiration you can get for just going outside and touching nature, right? Breathing it in, seeing it, touching it, tasting it, smelling it. So, and in meditation, we always need to dive as deep into the recesses of our heart whenever we can. Because that's really where the most truest and most profound wisdom lives and resides. So, and of course, your word is your bond. At least it should be. Standing by the principles of your integrity and honesty and trustworthiness. So when we could do these things, that deepens our connection to life, to creation, to each other, to the ineffable, right? Let's find our way back from hell. Those of us who are feeling stuck, Michael.
Let's do it.
When we're lost in connection, again, it could feel like there's no way out. But that's the greatest lie told by the state of isolation. It's a lie. It is a lie. It wants you to believe that you're cut off forever, right? Yeah. But that's just simply not true. Connection is never truly severed. Do we fray the connection? Yes. Do we corrupt or corrode that? Yes. Do our bridges lose footing? Yeah, they do. But it's never truly lost. We have to start with a single step back towards the connection, right? Where do we start? Where do we start?
You gotta start small, but you gotta start. Man, I tell you what, I lived in a planning phase for over a decade, and that gets you nowhere. It is about action and consistency. I have a client right now I'm working with where I am literally telling them, you need to get out into a group. I help them find a bunch of groups that fit their interests. And it's like, you're going to go and it is going to be uncomfortable and you are not going to make any friends when you first go. That's okay. It's about showing up because people are just as trepidatious as you are about making connections. But it's about showing up, and every time you go, it gets a little bit easier. You'll start realizing people start opening up to you, and you'll start opening up to them. And by the fourth time, I guarantee you'll have a new friend. But it is about putting yourself out there. It is about realizing, hey, I'm not happy with where I'm at. And then asking yourself, what is one small step that is realistic that I can take now? You know, I have gone so far as to go with people, clients, to events to help them break out of their shell so they know they had someone there, which I don't like doing too much because I don't want to rob them of their confidence and a belief that they can do it themselves.
Right.
But there is power in action and only in action.
A single breath. Yeah, I said it, a single breath. Just a simple pause, a mindful breath. If anything, it reminds you that you are alive and you're connected to the act of breathing. And then from there, you can build upon that, right? Life is still in you. Life is still around you. A single reflection, speak your needs out loud to whoever, whatever, to yourself if you need to. You don't have to, there is no leap into this perfect connection, right? Even when we are connected, there's no perfect connection. Not at
No, not at all.
the human level, right? No one is beyond redemption. It's my favorite axiom. That which is corrupt takes time to reform. Even when we've drifted off into a very deep isolation, there is always a way back. We are never beyond restoration. So, healing or moving ourselves out of this hell, it's not about rushing or pretending. It's about patiently rebuilding trust, whether that be with source, with creation, with yourself, with others. It doesn't matter. It's about choosing moment by moment not to stay lost and isolated. When you hear the whispers that says, "You are alone," that's a lie. The truth is, you belong. So, choosing heaven here and now. Let's close with this, Michael. Any closing thoughts for the topic today before we move on to our good stuff?
Yes. If you feel like you're in hell right now, or if you're someone who is in isolation and is trying to justify that as where you want to be in life, look at your wounds. Often rejection, abandonment, they control and dictate our lives without us being none the wiser. You don't have to do anything elaborate. Like we said, you don't have to jump into all these crazy things, but start small. Start taking actionable steps to reclaim your life and reclaim connection. Because within connection, that is where you're going to find heaven. That is where you're going to find abundance. That is where you're going to find purpose. That's where you're going to find flow. That's where you're going to find joy. I promise you this with my last breath, that is the secret sauce you are missing from life right now if you are struggling with this. The magic you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding. And I mean that with all of me.
Heaven and hell are not places far away. Again, they're states of connection and disconnection. We create this connection or disconnection with every choice we make, moment to moment. So we can choose love over resentment, truth over silence, integrity over a false sense of self-protection. We can choose connection over isolation. We could begin to step back into that. And if you're already there, just don't forget to tend to it like a garden. Because when we pull back or we close ourselves off or we live from fear, we experience hell long before the afterlife. I'll finish with this axiom before we get into this good stuff. Release what you think you know, for fixed ideals and a hardened mind are poison. Let go of judgment and remain open and accepting to all possibilities. Openness makes connection possible. When we harden our heart, when we hold too tightly to the things that we are experiencing in the moment, we build ourselves a prison instead of a bridge. We only build bridges when our heart is open. The choice is daily. With every text we send or ignore, with every conversation we enter or avoid, these are choices we make to open or close our hearts, right? So, and we're deciding to live in that heaven or hell moment to moment. So let's go into our prayer today, our affirmative prayer. Let us pray. Source of eternal light and all of creation, I turn to you in gratitude and humility. I affirm that I am never truly alone. I am bound to source, to humanity, to creation, and to my own soul. Connection is the rhythm of life, and in it I find heaven. Disconnection is exile, and in it I taste hell. Today and every day, I choose connection. I affirm that I will honor the agreement of family, knowing I was never meant to walk alone. I affirm respect for the dignity of others, generosity in the sharing of myself, and grace in restoring what has been broken. I affirm hope, for no bond is beyond redemption, and faith that light will always reconnect what has been torn apart. I release the illusions of isolation and fear. I affirm the truth that every atom, every star, every breath, and every heartbeat is woven together in the great web of creation. I stand in that web now, whole and unshaken. I belong. I am connected. I am light. And in light, I am free. And so it is.
So it is.
Our affirmations for today. I am never alone. I am connected to God, to humanity, to creation, and to myself. I honor the dignity of others, for respect deepens connection and dissolves isolation. I give generously of myself, knowing that connection multiplies when shared. I carry hope, for no disconnection has been beyond redemption. Every bond can be restored in time. I walk in light, remembering that all things, both seen and unseen, are bound together in the web of creation. My puppy dog is feeling isolated right now, even though she's sitting right next to me, because she got busted. If you see a jump cut in the show a few minutes ago, that's because I had to go rescue her from Grandma because she was in the trash pulling things out of the garbage.
No.
And now she's laying here pouting. So, our exercise for the day, the connection inventory. I love taking inventories. It's one of the best types of reflection you can do. Step 1, you're going to need a piece of paper for this. You're going to draw 4 circles on a page, and you're going to label them source, God, source of creation, whatever you need to write there for you. You're going to label the other circle others. On another circle, you're going to label self. And then on the 4th circle, you're going to label creation. Step 2 is I want you to write in each circle, where do I feel most connected right now in the moment? And where do I feel most disconnected? Write these in the circles. Step 3, you're going to identify the gap. Choose the one circle where you feel the greatest disconnection. And I want you to ask yourself, what is one small step I can take this week to rebuild connection here? And that could be, reaching out to a friend or spending time in prayer, walking in nature, journaling, reflecting, that type of thing. Step 4, you're going to anchor yourself. Close by reading this affirmation. You can read it out loud or you can listen to me read it, whatever helps you the best. I am connected. I belong to Source, to humanity, to creation, and to myself. In connection, I am whole. Now, I would recommend that you return to this exercise at least monthly as a way to kind of tend to your garden of connection. Any extra tips or tactics for the exercise today?
No, I love this exercise, though, especially the coming back part, because it's all about being able to put measurable things in place to help you see how much you're growing. Because it's easy to just keep looking at that goalpost you're pushing back and back and back and back. When you're starting to break free, use this as a guide. That way you can see where you're at and where you're growing. Because again, it's not going to be that first encounter where you make a bunch of friends, but it's going to be the consistency and you constantly showing up. So just, again, meet yourself where you're at, but this is a great way for you to help gauge and see just how much you're growing every month.
Yep. And I know that was kind of a quasi journaling exercise, but I'm going to give you some journaling prompts as well. Where do I feel most connected right now? Whether that's to God or Source, to others, myself, creation, where do I feel most isolated? What patterns of fear might be creating those pockets of disconnection? I know that one kind of sounds like the exercise, but it just has less steps. If you're kind of a little more advanced, like old Michael, what truth about myself or another have I been avoiding out of fear or pride? How might facing it open a door back to connection? Who needs a small act of love or acknowledgement from me? What one message or call or gesture could reweave a frayed bond? Build that bridge. How am I tending to the relationships and communities that feed my spirit? Where have I been complacent, allowing that decay instead of nurturing connection? And the last one I have for you, where have I exiled myself because of shame or regret or even fear? What would it mean to offer grace and allow myself back into belonging? So today I'm going to invite you, encourage you, beseech you, choose connection, reach out or allow yourself to be reached out to, forgive, ask questions, listen deeply, step back into that web of light that's been holding you together all along. Heaven isn't waiting. It's here if you choose it. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We appreciate all the likes and shares and comments. We appreciate you checking out our website that Michael and I worked so hard to put together. So with love and gratitude, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.